The New York Islanders haven't done much this offseason, but they've made a little bit of noise today with the re-signing of 3 restricted free agents. We'll get into the details of these signings right now. Hey everybody, so the New York Islanders have found themselves in the news today with the announcement of 3 key re-signings of restricted free agent players. Biggest one certainly being defenseman Noah Dobson, also newly acquired D-man Alexander Romanov, and forward Kieffer Bellows, who are now all under contract for this upcoming season. So we're going to take a look at these deals, talk about them, and talk about what these players bring to the Islanders and how important they're going to be to this team this coming season. So let's get into it here, taking a look. First up, Alexander Romanov, who they traded for at the draft. Needed a new contract. He's a 22-year-old defenseman. He gets a 3-year deal at $2.5 million per season. Overall, pretty solid, fairly low cap hit there for Romanov, who I still think has some more upside that we haven't seen him reach yet. The biggest and by far most important out of these signings is Noah Dobson, who is also a 22-year-old defenseman. He gets a 3-year deal at $4 million per season. Dobson coming off of a breakout year last season. I actually think this deal is a steal for the Isles. We'll talk more about that later. And then forward Kieffer Bellows. He's a 24-year-old winger who has pretty much been, in and out of the lineup on that line of a full-time NHLer versus not for the last couple of years. And he gets a fairly cheap 1-year, $1.2 million deal. He is trying to establish himself as a full-time NHLer this coming season. So if we take a look at these players, first one I want to talk about is certainly Noah Dobson, because this is the most important deal for the Islanders out of the bunch. He's a 6'4" D-man, right shot, played a huge role on this team last season, had a breakout year with 51 points in 80 games last season, 13 goals, 38 assists, 22 points on the power play. This guy was an impact player. Now, the Islanders didn't have a great year last year. There's no doubt about that. They were kind of disappointing, without a doubt disappointing. But Noah Dobson was a huge bright spot. And, for him to be a 50-plus point D-man at, still in his early 20s, I think he has the potential to go up over 60 points this coming season, or certainly within the next couple of seasons. He is an absolute steal at $4 million per season. I honestly thought we were likely to see the Islanders commit to him long-term after how well he played last year, but obviously they go with the 3-year bridge deal, which does, keep the cap hit down and helps them with their current situation, because if they were going to sign Dobson long-term, they would have had to have made a trade to open up the money to be able to do that, because they are pretty tight to the cap. They're not, over it like a lot of teams are right now, but they only have a couple million in cap space even after these deals. So if they were gonna commit to Dobson long term, they were gonna have to move somebody to be able to fit that kind of contract. They decided to keep the cap hit down at $4 million, do it on a 3-year bridge deal. This kid is going to get paid when this deal is up. 3 years from now, when he's 25 and coming out of this contract, this kid is going to get paid, because he is a very good young defenseman with a lot of offensive upside, and I think is going to continue to put up big points at the NHL level. But for the Isles, this is a great contract and a very, very important player that they had to have back. And not just for 1 year either, but needed to have under contract for at least a few seasons. Another player, another defenseman, very important, is Alexander Romanov, who they traded for at the draft this season. 22-year-old, 6'1", left shot D-man, plays with a physical edge. Last season, he played 79 games with the Montreal Canadiens. 3 goals, 10 assists, 13 points, was a -9, but that team wasn't very good, and also had 53 penalty minutes. He's played his first 2 seasons in the NHL with Montreal. Now, obviously, he's an Islander. This is going to be an interesting player to watch. This is an interesting player to watch for the New York Islanders this year. I think he has more upside potential than what he's shown in the NHL so far. He had 13 points last season. That's not a huge amount. He plays with a real chip on his shoulder. He's physical, not afraid to get involved that way. I'd like to see some more offense out of him. I think he's got the capability for some more offense. But you don't want him to lose, his defensive game either, and you don't want him to lose that chip on his shoulder or physicality. So it's kind of going to be a interesting, style to see how Romanov plays with the Islanders. Just kind of where he's able to get his game to. He's only 22. He's still developing. He's a young defenseman still, and I think does have a lot of upside potential. Not a bad contract at all at $2.5 million per season. He also gets a 3-year bridge, so his contract will be up the same year as Dobson's. They'll both be 25 when that happens. And another guy that has a chance to get himself some bigger money down the line if he plays well on this deal. But he's going to play a pretty prominent role with the Islanders this season. They traded for him for a reason. And they're going to need him to continue to develop and continue to get better. I want to see him keep that physicality. I want to see a little bit more offense. But if he can become a solid two-way D-man that can give you 20, 25 points, 50 to 60 penalty minutes, some good hits, some, involved physically when he needs to be, and play well at both ends of the ice, he could become a pretty good D-man for New York. He's started that way, but I still think he has room to grow. And lastly, and probably the least consequential one, is Kieffer Bellows, 24-year-old winger, plays primarily on the left side, but can play either wing. And he's had a slow start to his career, I guess is one way to put it. He was the 19th overall pick back in 2016. He was a first-round pick, and he had fairly high expectations coming out of college and into the NHL. And he just really hasn't lived up to them. I mean, he's only played 67 career games. He only has 11 career goals. This was a guy who was supposed to be a consistent 20-goal scorer when he did get to the NHL level, and that has not been the case. He hasn't even consistently gotten to the NHL level. He played 45 games for the Islanders last season, scoring 6 goals, 13 assists for 19 points. Again, he played a limited role. It's not like he was getting top 6 time or really put in a position to put up a lot of points or score a lot of goals. But he hasn't earned that. I mean, he played 8 games in 2019-2020. He played 14 games in 2020-2021. And then last year he played 45 games, which is a career high. Set career highs in goals, assists, points, all of it. But just hasn't really established himself as a full-time NHLer yet. So this is a big year for Bellows to do that, to establish himself as an NHLer and be a regular in the lineup and hopefully start to put some points on the board, some pucks in the net, and, make himself a regular in that lineup. And we're going to see if he's able to do that. It's only a 1-year deal. It's kind of a show-me year for Kieffer Bellows. If he doesn't show out this year, if he doesn't produce, I would not be surprised if the Islanders, whether they just don't qualify him at the end of the year or whether they try and trade him at some point. I would not be surprised if he's gone if he doesn't have a productive year for the Islanders this season, because he's 24 now. He was drafted back in 2016. They've given him plenty of time to grow and develop and learn and earn that spot, and he really hasn't done it yet. So this really does feel like a one last show me year for Kieffer Bellows, and he's either going to earn himself a spot in the lineup regularly or he's going to be on his way out from New York. But all in all, these are 3 pretty important signings for the New York Islanders today. Again, they really haven't made a lot of changes this offseason. They haven't done much of anything. The Romanov trade has been their biggest move of the offseason. So this is a team that's largely going to be bringing back the same roster and lineup that they had last season for the most part. And they were pretty disappointing last season. So they're going to have to get better from within. They're obviously, with their lack of doing things this offseason, are expecting to get better from within. And these are three players that are going to have to play a pretty prominent role in that if they are going to be improved this season. So that's what I've got in the New York Islanders signings. Thank you guys so much for watching. And with that, please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our merchandise store, membership, and donations down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you all soon.